All right, welcome back. Today we're going to be working on this chapter 5 of Stripe customers. So, customer in Stripe is kind of the going to be the backbone of our system, or the bridge between communicating between Stripe and our web app. So, like any good fun with third-party libraries, we're actually going to have to get our API key. We're actually going to want to set up our environment as well. So I'm going to just copy this, head to our .m file, and add it. So we have our Stripe publishable key, Stripe secret key, as well as Stripe webhooks secret key. Now that we have these, let's go under our config, our Nuxt config, and we're going to add these here as well. Just make sure that you provide the correct keys and syntax. I'm going to just hack this together. Cool. So now your runtime config and your Nuxt should look similar to this, or nearly identical. And then these are still empty. So to create these, we're going to actually go to stripe.com. We're going to create a new project. Sorry, a new account. And I'm going to call this Nuxt Stripe tutorial. Then right here, we have our publishable key. Throw that in, as well as our secret key. Copy that as well. Cool. That wasn't too bad. As you can see, Stripe webhook secret is still empty, and that will be for this lesson, but we'll be sure to fill that in soon. The next thing we're going to want to do is go to our Prisma schema, and we are going to add a few new values to our account model. First, we're going to do Stripe customer ID, and this is a string, optional string, but it's going to be unique. So no account is going to have the same customer ID. And then I'm also going to have an is subscribed boolean. We're going to say at default is false. And same thing, these are both just like Stripe specific, but if our user is subscribed, we're going to manage that through this value in our account. Now after these changes, make sure you go to your terminal and type npx prisma generate, and then npx, make this bigger for you, npx prisma migrate dev. I'm going to just call this migration Stripe fields, Stripe account fields. Great. Next up, I want to create a Stripe utility function. And so here in my server directory, I create a directory called utils, and in here, stripe.ts. And here we're going to import Stripe from Stripe, which we installed earlier. And then we're going to do export const stripe equals new stripe. And we're going to use runtime config. Use runtime config. And this is going to be our Stripe secret key. Cool. So here we are, we're just instantiating a Stripe object that once exported, we can pass around throughout the remainder of our project and reuse it. So our goal here is to, whenever we create a user or an account, we want to also create a Stripe customer and connect the two. So any transaction that this user creates on our end is reflected in Stripe, and vice versa. Any interaction with Stripe is reflected on our end. And the place to do that is here in our .ts, our auth file. And so here, let's import Stripe from our server /util/stripe. And we're going to use this here in our adapter. So something I wanted to show is here's the source code to the Prisma adapter function that we are using here. And if you look into it, it's returning a handful of functions. So we have create user, get user, etc. So for example, create user is just running prisma.user.create and passing it the data that is passed to that function from our auth module. So what I found to be effective is to actually overwrite this link account function. So maybe overwrite is the incorrect terminology. Maybe extend is better. So what I found that you can do is instead of just doing this entire Prisma adapter object or function, you can actually destructure it, and then we're going to rewrite the link account function and pass it the function parameter. So again, if we look over, we have link account, and so if we look at it, all this link account is it's creating an account as well, or sorry, creating account, whereas create user is creating user. And remember, if we look at our schema, this account is where our Stripe customer ID and is subscribed are being held, and that's what we're interested in. So in linked account, let's first do a const user equals await prisma.user.findUnique or throw. We're going to do a where ID is equal to account.userID. And then we're going to say if no user.email, throw new error, user email is required to create a Stripe account. And then once we're past this conditional, we can assume that the user does have an email. So do customer is equal to await stripe.customers.create, where the email is equal to user.email. So here we're calling Stripe's customers.create function to create a customer on Stripe's end. And then we can return prisma.account.create data account. So if we're going to just do this, this is basically the same as this right here. But because we actually want to go within this and extend a little bit, we're going to do Stripe customer ID is equal to customer.id. So now we're setting the Stripe customer ID within our account field, the Stripe customer ID field within our account object to customer.id as we create the account. And then we're also returning it from the linked account function. So I know this may seem a little complicated, but I hope maybe providing some of the source code and, as you look through this, it makes a little bit more sense. So with that in place, I want to do an npx Prisma Studio to run Prisma in our browser. And I'm actually going to go ahead and I'm going to delete the user that's currently there and the account. Cool. So when you refresh, it should all be zeros. Now let's go back to our web browser. Let's try and reset our server. Here we go. Now when we sign in, remember this is all empty. If we sign in, we can see an account is subscribed false check this out. Now we have Stripe customer ID. So let's look at this value. So it's CUS underscore QMQ, capital Qs. And if we go under Stripe dashboard and look at customers, check that out. That's me. Us, QMQ, TRZ, etc., etc. So now we've begun to bridge the gap between Prisma and our web app. We still are unable to do any checkouts, but this is a very important part of that, is this database column right here. You'll see basically any future code we run against Stripe is going to rely on this one field, the Stripe customer ID. So we now have it. All right. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you learned a lot. See you in the next one.